Hey, good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel, Wednesday, September the 17th. And I survived my logging this morning. And over lunch, I watched the Chris Eubank Jr. Connor Benn press conference for their rematch, which is scheduled to take place on November the 15th at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Tottenham, which is part of London. Of course, whenever you've got Chris Eubank Jr. And Connor Benn in a press conference, it's going to be entertaining. You may not like the trash talking. I mean, I'm not a big liker of trash talking, as you know, but it's going to be entertaining. Chris Eubank Jr. is known to be quite a wordsmith. And he certainly is never shy of saying what he thinks. Connor Benn is a little bit more, maybe a little bit more down to earth, but it also isn't shy of saying what he thinks. Well, this press conference was no different, except there was no eggs, and there was less of the ad hominem you're a drug cheat, blah, 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 blah kind of stuff. But it was an interesting press conference nevertheless. I made a few notes. I would say that Chris Eubank Jr. is basically one hell of a salesman. Not that this fight needs a lot of selling, because their first fight back in April was an absolute great fight. Exceeded all the hype and expectation, in my view. But Chris Eubank Jr. is a very solid salesman. He spent a lot of time going on about the things that had been done to him in the last fight, and the target of his criticism, of his venom, wasn't Connor Benn, but it was Eddie Hearn of Matchroom. And he said that there'd been contract breaches, there'd been fines, there'd been sabotage, there was biased commentary. I have to say, I thought the commentary was biased. I listened to it at an airport departure gate, and I thought it was terribly, when I watched the fight, it completely was different to what I had listened to, They said that Chris Eubank Jr. was saying that he was stalled on the way to the stadium last time, that security walked in front of his car, they slow walked him, all this was meant to distract him, and that, everything was done possible to kind of mess him up. But the most shocking allegation came, and I have to be careful how I say this, because I'm sure that a whole bunch of content creators are going to get sued. Chris Eubank Jr. alleges that after the fight, the ambulance that was taking him to hospital because he had severe dehydration was prevented from leaving for 20 minutes. And he said that if this had been a serious injury, that may have meant the difference between, Eddie Hearn exploded and tried to get Connor Benn to restate it in a more litigation-friendly way. I'm quite certain that Eddie Hearn will be speaking to his corporate counsel about the possibility of suing. Whether or not a lawsuit will get off the ground or not, who knows, right? But Chris Eubank Jr. was very forceful in blaming Eddie Hearn for all the ills that ailed him, kind of thing. And he also reserved a great deal of venom for Robert Smith. Now, Robert Smith is the head of the British Boxing Board of Control. And he said that Robert Smith had partaken in allowing Billy Joe Saunders to come to his changing room, when Billy Joe Saunders, Chris Eubank said, is his nemesis. He said that Robert Smith had allowed Connor Benn to use horsehair gloves. He said that Robert Smith was in the pocket of Eddie Hearn and co. And he made a point that was actually very interesting. Amongst all this, he was talking about what happens to the money that is imposed by fines, the administrative penalties that are imposed upon fighters by the British Boxing Board of Control. What happens to the money? Chris Eubank Jr. said that the money is supposed to go to help, up-and-coming boxers, those who can't afford kits, etc., so forth. And Chris Eubank Jr. was pleading with the media to, follow the money, investigate what's happening, what happens to the money. And it's something actually that myself and many other YouTubers have said, like, where does it go, right? So I would imagine that the British Boxing Board of Control will be askance at what was said. And of course, Eddie Hearn will, like I say, he'll probably rant and rave about lawsuits. Will he actually sue? Oh, your guess is as good as mine, right? The only thing we know about the law is the expense. And of course, defense to a defamation lawsuit is truth and or justification. So who knows, right? Anyhow, it was entertaining. Let me think. The conference between these two went on for about 30 minutes, so I'm just trying to condense it down, for a manageable bite-sized kind of video here. Chris Eubank Jr. said that the reason he will win again is he's simply the better fighter. He's got Bomac in his corner, Terence Crawford's trainer. He said, yes, that, my fighter's already won once. It'll be easier second time around. Ben Shalom was there. Didn't really say that much of interest. Eddie Hearn tried to speak, but Chris Eubank Jr. always talks over Eddie Hearn when Eddie Hearn's speaking. So when Eddie Hearn's saying something, Chris Eubank Jr. is just doing that. Connor Benn came across, I think, more likable than I've heard him before, to be honest with you. He said he took it too lightly the last time. He was angry. He tried to go for a knockout. Nigel Benn spoke and said, that he called his son a loser. He said that it's been kind of like a common thing with them now. You loser, you've got to right the wrong. That he went out sort of, didn't think about anything that they'd been working on in training. Just basically tried to take Chris Eubank Jr.'s head off. So Connor Benn is promising a different version, a version that's more thinking and less, emotional. And that was really about it. Explosive allegations. That's what I would say that Chris Eubank Jr. was making. And they were being directed to Matchroom, Eddie Hearn. It'll be a good fight. I'm quite certain it'll be a good fight. The first one was great. I suspect the second one will be good as well. Will it be as good as the first one? Hard to say, really. But November the 15th, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Should be a very, very exciting fight. Probably will be a lot more exciting build-up as well. Will there be a lawsuit? Who knows? You might hear on other channels toenail issues. Apparently, Chris Eubank Jr. was so dehydrated that his toenail fell off. Eddie Hearn was making fun of that. Or that's going to probably be the tagline in a lot of people's videos. And that's about it, really. Entertaining. All the big channels are carrying it. Full 30 minutes. Connor Benn, of course, 23-1. His only loss now is to Chris Eubank. Chris Eubank Jr. 35-3. He's lost to Liam Smith, George Groves, and Billy Joe Saunders. Will he end up losing one to Connor Benn so that the trilogy could be set up? Wouldn't surprise me. I'm a bit of a cynic about these things. Who do I want to win? I don't really have a dog in the fight. Chris Eubank Jr. now says he's the people's champion. That might be the case. I would say that both fighters gained a lot of reputation based on the last fight. People were looking at Connor Benn and sort of, thinking poorly of him. I think they think more highly of him now because he put up one hell of a fight. And Chris Eubank Jr., I think if you like him, you still like him. And if you didn't like him before, you might like him a little bit. They're both polarizing characters. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I'm not really fussed who wins. I think I preferred Eubank Jr. to win in the first one, but now in the rematch, I'll think about it a little bit more. But as long as it's a good fight and both guys go home safe and sound, I'll just be happy to watch it as a fan. There we go. Let me know what you think. That's the most important thing. If you can, please like, share and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.